Hi and welcome to this podcast. I'm Dr. Phil Parker and this is the introductory session of our Lightning Process podcast. And I developed the Lightning Process 25 years ago. In that time, I've done a whole range of podcasts, but I realised I've never really done one on the Lightning Process, so I thought it would be great to do this. This podcast is for you if you're someone who's completely new to the Lightning Process, someone who's interested in taking it or curious as to what it is, or knows someone who's thinking about doing it and want to get a bit more info. It's also for you if you've done the Lightning Process. We want to cover a whole range of stuff in this podcast. So wherever you are on that journey, whether you're curious, beginning, having got some experience in the Lightning Process, done it and want to go take it further, this is the right place for you. We're going to be covering a whole bunch of stuff over the course of the episodes, looking at what is the Lightning Process, what it isn't, because there's lots of strange information about the Lightning Process out there, some which is accurate and some which isn't, what the research is, what's going on in the news that supports the ideas of the Lightning Process, and practical ideas that you can take away so that you get loads of value and a deeper understanding of the Lightning Process in each of the episodes. So to begin with, I guess, what is the Lightning Process? A really important question. And over the years, I've been looking at great ways to answer this because it's quite complex. It has three sections. So the first section is an audio study program where you listen to me talking about concepts, some of which I'll be covering on this podcast, but in huge details, and the research, the ideas, the science, to explain what's going on so you get a really good understanding of the Lightning Process. It's called part one. You listen to that at home. When you've listened to that, then you get a chance to talk to a practitioner, really just to have a chat to make sure, is this something that makes sense for you? Is this a good fit? Because for some people are like, it just doesn't feel right for me. And other people are like, I think this is good, but I need a bit more info. So they have a chat with their practitioner at no charge. It's just an opportunity to talk about, well, is this right for me? Then they move on to, if it feels right, onto the 3-day seminar, which people often think is the Lightning Process. It isn't. The Lightning Process is part one, the audio bit, the chat with the practitioner, the seminar, and the follow-up after the seminar. So the seminar is 3 days. It's 3 half days actually, about 3 to 5 hours depending on what's going on. It's in very small groups, so usually 2, 3, 4 people with you with often similar-ish issues. And your practitioner, who's very highly skilled, and I'll talk about their training later on, guides you through the process. So what's covered? Well, we'll be covering this in different podcasts, but fundamentally, it looks at how can you use your brain to change the way your body works. So we work with people who've got physical issues. So that ranges from really serious neurological issues like MS and pain, and people with problems with their digestion, with their immune system, with fatigue. So chronic fatigue is something we've done a lot of work with. Long COVID. So where their body somehow has got stuck and isn't recovering in the way that we would hope it would. So how does the Lightning Process affect physical health issues? Because the Lightning Process isn't a medicine, it's a training. And it's a brain training. And the reason this is so important is the brain, which is up here, connects to every single part of the body, and it gathers information from the body as to what's going on, how's it working, and it instructs the body to do things. So it gets muscles to become tense or relax, it gets glands to produce hormones, it can change the chemical balance of your blood, the action of your immune system. And so the brain is really central to all physical function in your body. And that's where the Lightning Process really works. It goes, right, how can we help you to train your brain in a different way so it instructs the body in a different way, it calms things down, it encourages health, it breaks out of old cycles that you've got stuck into that aren't helping your health. So that's really what the Lightning Process is, a brain retraining. How do you train your brain? Well, there's lots of ways to train your brain. The way we use is using movement, because movement gives lots of information to the brain, getting you to consciously steer your brain and your neurology in a new direction so that you start to change how your brain uses your body and works your body. It takes a little bit to learn that and to practice that, but it's kind of based on the idea that we've seen this over centuries of meditators being able to get calm, of monks being able to do amazing things with their body. being able to endure cold in ways that you wouldn't imagine. But it's also based on the most recent research, which has been going on for the last 40, 50 years, into the way our brain can be influenced by us to change our physical health. So in the episodes that follow, you'll hear me talking about the research and also some of the concepts like neuroplasticity, which I'll briefly mention here. Neuroplasticity is the ability the brain has to change depending on use. So if we use our brain in a particular way repetitively, it learns how to do a new skill or behavior or a pattern or a habit. And sometimes we can get into habits which are really useful for us, and sometimes we can get into habits that are quite harmful for our health, like smoking, drinking, taking drugs, and my PhD was in addictions. Or we can get into habits where we're triggering not very healthy responses in our physiology. And the lightning process helps us to identify those. So the lightning process works also with emotional health issues, psychological issues, as well as physical ones. So that would include things like habits, addictions, patterns of behavior that aren't helpful, OCD, depression, anxiety, and a whole range of stuff. And one of the questions people often have is, how can one training affect both physical stuff and emotional stuff? Well, the answer really is the brain. The brain, of course, manages both those things, manages a whole bunch of other stuff as well, like learning, the way we process information. So we work a lot with that as well. But we can see, of course, the brain affects our physiology, and therefore if you can find ways to steer your brain in a different way, it could change your physical health. And of course, the brain is very much involved with our cognitive processing, our emotions, the way we deal with things psychologically. So that's why the lightning process can work with both things. What's important really to identify here is, although we're saying the lightning process works with the brain to change your body, we're not saying, a really, really super important thing, we're not saying that your problems are in your mind. That's completely not what I've just said. I said that the brain affects the body, and if we can change the way the brain works, we have a chance to change the way the body works. It's such an important distinction that people often get kind of caught up in. They go, what are you saying, my health issues are in my mind? No, absolutely not. We're saying that your physical health problems are in your body, but they are affected by your brain. So it's really important to distinguish brain and mind. Now, emotional issues, fair enough. Emotional issues very much are in our mind, but they're also in our brain as well, and they leave a footprint in our physiology. There's strong links between being calm, how that affects our body, and being stressed has an effect on our body, for sure. There's also loads of research into, and we'll be coming onto this in separate episodes, on the science of what happens when we are stressed, what happens when our body gets stuck, how does that affect our brain, what happens. So there's some interesting studies into meditation. If you are a meditator, even if you just do it for 15 minutes a day for 8 weeks, you'll get changes in your brain. They're just changes in your brain as a result of using your brain differently. And prolonged meditation affects your immune system. Again, there's lots of science into this. So this is really identifying that our brain affects our body. So that's the first thing. So we said the lightning process, we've got this training program that trains you to use your brain differently. Think of it a little bit like learning a new language, but instead of speaking Spanish or French or Norwegian, you're learning how to get your brain to do something different. It's a skill set. What else is valuable to know about the lightning process? So we talked about there's the audio before, there's a chat with the practitioner, seminar after the seminar. Then we're going to move into, okay, we've got these new skills, how do we use our brain differently? It's going to take some practice, so we're going to need some support. And that's another key thing of the lightning process. So there's dedicated support after the lightning process. It's included within the whole seminar lightning process program. So we know that people are going to need that support. And talking about support, one of the reasons the lightning process is done face-to-face or online with a human rather than from video is that when we're learning to identify patterns that we've got into, it can be really tough to spot our own patterns. So my work in addiction, for instance, the first thing you have when you've got substance use or addiction or alcohol use issue is to be aware that you're overusing that substance. And a lot of times people aren't. They need somebody to say, that thing you're doing, that's what needs to change. We can get into habits and routines and patterns very easily. In the case of addiction, it's a great example. what if the patterns we're running are even more beyond our conscious awareness? They're physiological patterns that we just don't even know that we're doing. How can we change those? Well, the first thing we've got to do is become aware of them. We need someone to support us, and that's a really key part of having a great practitioner and working in a small group. You'll have other people there to support you, help you, guide you, say, oh, I do this as well, what about this, check this out. And that process is so useful and almost impossible to do on your own. So that's why we run seminars with experienced trainers, because they can help you spot your blind spots, the bits that you just wouldn't be aware of. Such an important key skill. Within that learning process, it's well acknowledged that any training has to be done in a really kind way. It's particularly when you're learning new things and you're identifying things you didn't even know were going on in your body. So a central thing of the lightning process is kindness. And there's an episode of the podcast all about why kindness is super important for your health. And it's a central theme of all my work. Any change has to be done with kindness. So that's what we do. It's such an obvious thing to state, but the lightning process is an incredibly kind process where you're learning to be even kinder to yourself than maybe you've ever been before. And to train people in being kind to themselves, it has to be done in a kind, supportive, nurturing environment. So the lightning process is this program that trains you to use your brain differently, uses the latest science, looking at neuroplasticity, looking at patterns that we've got into that, we have often no idea that are running in our neurology, that we kindly need to recognize and shift and change. And it takes you through all those steps, being aware of those patterns, finding ways to shift it and change it. And in the subsequent podcast episodes, I'll be taking you through the kind of various stages of that journey of the lightning process, so you have a deeper understanding of it. It won't be the entire lightning process, because that would take 3 days of interaction, and this is not interactive. I don't know what's going on for you guys specifically, but you'll get a deeper sense of what the lightning process might be able to do for you. And if you've done the lightning process, have a deeper understanding of why the lightning process works and what you might need to do to make it even more successful for you. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief intro to what the lightning process is, which is this brain training program that people choose to join if they want to. They don't have to, but if they want to, then we're very happy to offer it to them. Starts with part 1, which is this audio, which you can get from the website if you go to philparker.org or lightningprocess.com. Continues with this 3-day seminar, 3 half days actually, and then continues afterwards with at least 3 hours of really focused, tailored support. And then after that, there's loads more support, loads of free stuff that people can just, like these video sessions and audio sessions that people can engage with, because we know when you learn a new training program, whatever it is, you need time, energy, kindness to put it into practice, and support and guidance in that. So we're really there for you as practitioners, and I'll talk more about the practitioners who are in all the countries around the world and what their training is, so you get an understanding of who they are, because they're not just trained in the lightning process, they're already trained in a whole bunch of other skills to support you in health. But I'll be talking about that on another episode. If you've got any questions, or you say, could you talk more about this, send me an email, phil@philparker.org. Love to hear from you. We really want people to understand how valuable the lightning process is, what it's achieved for so many people, and to resolve some of the questions that people naturally have about a lightning process. So if you've got any questions, do pop them into phil@philparker.org, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care now.